Hi, I'm Dr. Linda Mintle. Hey, thanks for listening to the Dr. Linda Mintle Show. Faith radio podcasts are only possible because of your support. Thanks for giving and for sharing with a friend.
Doing life together, reaching out with hope, encouraging one another, each step along the road. You and I can make everything a little better, doing life together.
Well, hi, everyone, and welcome to the Dr. Linda Mintle Show. I'm your host, Dr. Linda Mintle, the relationship doctor, and I'm here along with my co-host sitting on the other side of the podcast table. His name would be Dr. Norm Mintle.
Yes, ma'am. That's me. Here I am.
And he's my husband.
Yes.
We just have to qualify that, right?
We have to
disclose.
Right,
we have to
that's right.
disclose.
Full disclosure requires.
And every weekend we are here and we're doing life together. And as always, we're so glad you joined us.
So we often say happy weekend, but the truth is it's whenever you're listening to us, if you're listening to the podcast. And we're glad you did join us today because today I want us to together explore what I think is a major problem in our culture. And even between personal relationship folks, it's a word that we don't even use often, and I don't know why, but the word is B-L-A-M-E, blame. Let's look at the impact that has on all of us.
I know, we hear it. We hear the blame.
We hear the behavior.
I mean, I just have a hard time watching the news.
Ugh.
Because all it is on certain channels is just constantly blaming somebody for something. Rather, just report the facts to me.
That's right.
Stop telling me who was wrong and who did it and who's in trouble. I mean, it's just getting tiring these days because I feel like they're just looking for someone to blame instead of really trying to understand and work together and solve problems.
That's right.
Because it doesn't solve anything. And blame just makes people feel bad. And Norm, here's the scary part of all of this blame that we're hearing more and more in media. It encourages hate and discord among a lot of people. It's toxic.
Yes.
And it's also corrosive to relationships. It's often how people get rid of their own pain and their own discomfort, but it's obviously not a good way to do it.
The consequences are
Right.
horrible. So if it's so toxic, why do we do it so often? I mean, students blame teachers, employees blame bosses, husbands blame wives, parents blame children, social media blame everybody.
They do. They do. I think here's why it's so prevalent. When something bad happens to us, we get upset. We might get angry. We might get sad. We just get emotional, right? That's normal.
Okay.
So depending on how well you are at coping with life and how well you are at regulating those emotions and how stressed you are, when you're really highly emotional and stressed, you think less and you just react more.
Oh.
So it's easy to lash out at someone. And we get in that fight or flight, mode
Right.
where we're ready to fight or flight because we're so stressed and we're so angry and we want to protect ourselves. So I've mentioned this a few times in some of our past shows, but our brain is wired to find fault.
Oh, that's just original
I know.
sin from the garden, if you ask me.
Yeah, it's in there. It is
Yeah.
exactly right. We need a savior, right? Just
Yes.
for that reason
That's
alone. We could just look at that and say we're wired for negativity.
We're in trouble, right.
So in the moment, when we're so overwhelmed, we have to do something to make us feel safe. And usually that's
yes.
blaming someone else. We think things like they've got to sort themselves out. So we're blaming them, right? They better disappear. They better not talk to me like that. They need to grovel and apologize, or they need to stop. They're the problem because I can't take this anymore. So instead of looking inward,
Right.
we're just going to lash out.
Yeah, blame others.
Right.
So the problem there seems to me that you just react, and you react with blaming.
Yeah.
Which oftentimes we regret later.
Yeah, high emotions, and you say things you shouldn't. That's the regret. So the emotional reaction then, Norm, puts you in the victim role. So when you're blaming someone, you're the victim. Obviously, it can damage your relationship, maybe even more than it already has if you're struggling. But it can damage any relationship if you're constantly blaming. And it puts the other person on the defensive because they're being attacked by your blame.
And that's healthy for a relationship.
Yeah, that doesn't go well.
Yeah. So here's the thing. Even if you feel like you have the right to find fault with someone or something someone did, and you think you have every right to feel like you've been offended or hurt, let down, and you want to complain about their behavior, seems to me that's the moment to, quoting your title, press pause and think, am I getting in too deep with what I'm doing? Because I don't think this is solving anything.
Right. And it doesn't. And again, it only leads to the person being more defensive. That's one of the key concepts in my conflict book, is that when you start blaming people, they just feel defensive and they're just going to put up that self-protection and you're not going to get anywhere. So let's say, and I'm just going to make this up. Let's use an example. You and your wife have been having issues for some time. You're both probably are mostly at fault, which is, most of the time that's the case, right? We each contribute to something that's not going right in that relationship. So is only one of you really to blame? I mean, you could point the finger at others, your in-laws and different people, your partner, yourself, but doing so just doesn't solve anything. So when you're doing this, it's just going to inflame the situation, especially when I go back to this idea, and I do this in couples work all the time. Somehow you're both in this interactional pattern that becomes problematic. So you're both contributing something to that.
Yeah.
So it's never just one person. Now, you can do some really awful things and you are to blame for that if they're sinful or they're just clearly
hurtful.
wrong.
Right.
But most of the time in interactions, you're both feeding off of each other and something needs to change.
Well, it takes two to tango, and I think that's what you're saying, right?
Yeah.
So even though blame doesn't solve anything, it seems to serve a purpose, but is it a good purpose?
Yeah, it does. So it stops you from uncomfortable feelings and deeds, right? If you're blaming someone else, you don't have to feel bad.
Oh, yeah, right.
You don't have to think about what you've done.
That's what you meant by protect yourself.
Yeah,
I
you're
get
protecting.
It. Okay.
You can dust yourself off and you can say, I'm not a problem here. And so you don't have to be accountable for your own behavior.
Okay.
You don't feel the need to apologize when you blame anybody, right? So it serves that purpose. And you don't feel the need to make any uncomfortable changes in yourself.
Right.
So it does serve all those purposes.
Not healthy, but it serves purposes.
Right.
I get it. The point you're making, though, now is I think you're stuck. Because the situation is likely to not change. It'll be exactly the same and probably, based on these interactions, get worse.
Yeah. And so I really do like people to understand this when they come in for therapy, that we do hang on to things that are bad for us because they do serve a purpose. Now, that purpose is often defensive, but it's like you have to give it up. And when you do, you're going to feel really uncomfortable. So again, think about it, especially between couples. There's a lot of fault finding. There's sometimes there's shaming of the other person in a couple. And then, people refuse to apologize. They get the silent treatment, or you better grovel, you better come back, and you better really make this right. So there's a lot of really bad patterns that can develop when blame is in that picture.
Nothing you just listed makes for a healthy relationship, right? None. And research has shown that people who blame other people also themselves lose status. They seem to learn less, and they perform worse when you compare yourselves to other people who aren't blaming. Why is that?
Now, that was interesting, especially like the lose status. I had to really think about that. But what they're saying, when they blame somebody, they're saying, I can't change until you do. If someone blames you for everything, then it's time for you to speak up, right? So that's different. Share your perspective. Ask them to listen to your point of view. But don't discuss blame by placing blame. I've seen that. So I'm just going to tell my person, what they're doing that's so awful. But then they're just blaming them in the process. But it is interesting that you do lose status because you're just not willing to work on who you are, and then things get worse.
That makes sense. So do you think that chronic blaming can be a form of emotional abuse?
I think it can be if you are blamed for things that you don't do.
Oh.
It's like taking a verbal beating, right? And when that happens, the person receiving a regular diet of blame may start believing that they're responsible for things that they were not and were beyond their control. Do you remember that show we did on gaslighting? That was a lot of what this is, and that can be emotional abuse. And it certainly leads to low self-esteem.
And just a quick plug, you can always look on your platform by title or by topic and see if we've done a program on that one.
That gaslighting one was a good show.
Right.
That was a really good show.
And it seems to me that if you're being blamed all the time, nothing about that makes you want to feel intimate with your partner.
Right. I mean, it's difficult to get close to someone or maintain a close relationship when they're always having an accusing finger towards you, right?
Right.
You're just going to get defensive. You might get bitter. And sometimes A blamer who bases their blame on deception to avoid responsibility may also, Norm, distance themselves in a relationship in an attempt to preserve their own sense of self-worth. So it just widens the gap even more.
All right, let's turn the corner. If you're part of a blame game that's being played, how should you respond? Let's say to a partner who's chronically blaming you for everything.
So I would say in an intimate relationship, now you have to feel safe to do this, right? You would say, I feel blamed. Just be straight up. Just say, I'm feeling this way. From there, then you make a very conscious effort to listen to what your partner is saying and decide, do I have something to work on here? So you start it with, this is how I'm feeling. And then you have to evaluate, is there anything in this? And you can agree to be more aware of the things that bother the other person and then ask them to consider ways that they too can improve the relationship so that it's just not a one-way street. It's like both of you are working on this. So acting as a team to deal with these issues demonstrates that you have support for each other and you do care and you have compassion. And it's really the best way to keep relationships going.
So we should look at ourselves even if we have very little blame in the problem.
Yeah, I mean, whatever part is your, quote, fault, just take responsibility for that. And once you do, then ask the person to take responsibility for their part. So that's a lot of what I do in couples work, is what is your part? What's that part? When those parts go together, they don't do well. And both people must be okay with shouldering their side of the issue. Where it gets dicey is when people say, I don't have any part in that.
But remember, you're part of the team.
Right.
Right.
It's a relationship issue.
Right. What about the strategy of doing nothing in 10 seconds before we go to a break?
Well,
not a good one, right?
It's not a good one.
Okay, we'll pick that up right after the break. More on blaming on the Dr. Linda Mintle Show after this. I looked down and I saw 10
I didn't know what you were trying to do. I was like, Is every spare minute of your life filled with some activity, event, or demand? If so, you could be suffering from a very common American disease. It's called overcommitment, and it has seeped into every area of our lives. I'm Dr. Linda, the relationship doctor, and yes, I'll admit it, I've fallen prey to overcommitment in my life just like I imagine you have. Saying no occasionally is the best defense against overcommitment. But if it's too late and you're already overcommitted, here's a little tip to help you make it through. In the busiest days, you can still stop and take 5. Just for yourself. When your heart is racing and your thoughts are whirling inside your head, your effectiveness just plummets. But if you'll pause right in the middle of all the hubbub, maybe close your eyes, breathe deeply, and remind yourself that the current task will be completed, you'll feel an immediate sense of relief. Then you can head back into the job at hand with renewed focus and energy. And when the next chance comes to overcommit, it comes your way, you can work on your priorities by just saying, hey, no. Hi, I'm Dr. Linda Mintle of the Dr. Linda Mintle Show.
And I'm Dr. James Cribbs, and we co-authored a book, Living Beyond Pain.
If you're one of the 100 million people suffering from chronic pain, this is a book for you, Living Beyond Pain, in stores now.
This is the Dr. Linda Mintle Show. I'm glad you're listening with us today. I want to remind you to check out her website, drlindamintle.com. And there you'll find her books, her blogs, connect with her on social media. And a really easy way to know what she's writing about every day is to follow her on X and Instagram at drlindamintle or on Facebook at Dr. Linda Mintle, author and speaker.
You know, I'm kind of excited because Katie, who's also our editor, she added a couple of pictures to my website, and one was with our dog, Zoe, and I just love that picture. You did too, and we put it on the website.
We took a picture, Wanjing, of Linda in a therapeutic session with our dog, and it's so cool. Linda's doing therapy, and the dog's just looking so attentive.
in my office, because she was the therapy dog for our medical school, so she was always with me, and it was done by our photographer. It was really cute, but she put that up there.
She was an incredibly mentally healthy dog.
She was.
All right, just before the break, I threw you a quickie, and then we went to the break because we ran out of time. What about the strategy of just doing nothing at all if you're being blamed all the time? Should you go silent?
Yeah, I think it's okay to pause because probably you're feeling defensive. But you might want to say something like, what do you want me to do about it? So you might want to ask that question. But what you don't want to do is just give the silent treatment, because that is, that's frustrating. We've had that a few times in our own marriage over the years, and you really hate it. I did that a few times where I just went silent, and that was not a good couple strategy. So, you want to maybe try to turn that blame moment, if you can stay calm.
Right.
Turn it into some type of productive moment. Maybe the person may have a bad habit, probably learned from their own family or some earlier relationship. And the best way to extinguish it is to ignore it. But you don't want to ignore when somebody is blaming you. You don't want to just go silent and not address the issue.
Good. Okay, so let's talk about some strategies to how we deal with blame. Give us some guidelines.
All right, let's go through a number of these. So the first one is just don't be drawn into a discussion about whatever happened until you're calm, right?
So don't react. Like we said earlier, a lot of this happens because you're defensive and angry and all emotionally upset.
Yeah, I use the sort of the analogy of take your temperature with couples. Like if you're really hot,
Right.
you're in 103, you're probably going to go not good in that state.
Right.
If you're really, really hot and you're upset and you're emotional, this is not the time to talk about the problem.
Is this time to count backwards from 10?
Yeah, that's that from my distraction technique. So when you're really, I think we did a show on this where we talked about the amygdala hijack,
right.
where you just get so reactive and so emotional, that part of your brain that's the emotional center just blocks out any thinking.
Mm-hmm.
And so then if you do something that's very cognitive, like counting backwards or something, you can bring your thinking part of your brain back online.
I liked your one when you count to 10 in Spanish.
I know. Well, that I don't get too far. I go into French after about 3 of the numbers. But it's okay because then I'm counting in French, right?
And that's distracting your brain
It's distracting
from the
my
emotion.
brain.
Got
Right,
it. Okay.
right.
What's another?
Another one is it's related to that. You got to stay calm, but you also need to be considerate. So don't go mean when you feel blamed. I mean, I could take you down if you blamed me. This is one of the reasons I wanted to be a lawyer, is because I was so good at coming back at people. But you can't do that. You want to be able to be considerate. You make mistakes, people make mistakes. You want to offer the same kindness to other people. So this point is really about, even though you might feel like you want to bite off their head or take them down, don't do that.
Could you give someone the benefit of the doubt, maybe?
You could. That would be another strategy, because you could be wrong about
true.
what they're saying, and if you're giving them that benefit, maybe you haven't seen the whole picture and you're jumping to conclusion. So that's a good one. Another one is avoid at all costs this "yes you did" or "no you didn't," because those arguments just don't go anywhere. Because it's my word against your word.
Yep.
Who's going to win?
Sounds like the advice my mom gave us before we got married about fighting. She said, "Don't use that you all the time." And
And always never. Yeah.
Yeah.
That was good advice, actually. Find out whether the person acted with full knowledge of the potential consequences of their actions. So
How do you do that?
What I'm saying there is, when they're blaming you, did they really know? It's kind of related to what we've been saying. Did they really know the whole picture and what happened as a result of you acting a certain way? So maybe you acted a certain way because there were certain consequences for that. Like I just had this conversation with a coworker and he was blaming me for something and I gave him the context of why I responded the way I did. And he goes,
No
I
idea.
didn't have that context. And then he goes, context matters. And I said, yeah, it matters a lot. So I think that relates to that one. Another one, Norm, is just try to find out if you think that they're intending to hurt you. Like, are they just upset for the day?
Or the moment.
Or the moment.
Right.
Or are they really trying to get back at you
Right.
and hurt you? I mean, if they are, that's a more serious
That's a different,
problem.
yeah, right.
Right. But maybe you just didn't, maybe they just weren't taking the time to consider what that statement did to you at the moment. So that's getting at the sort of motivation of the heart.
Okay. What about, you don't really want to blame your partner to other people in your family, right? I mean, it's like your dad is that kind of Sounds like a bad idea to me.
Yeah, it is. I mean, it doesn't help in the middle of an argument. Now, it may be true that you may be just like your dad or you may be just like your mother. But I think in the middle of a conflict that's between the two of you, why are you bringing in third parties?
Right. Good point.
You know,
Isn't that what you call triangulation?
yes. Oh my gosh. It's like, well, you lived with me for all these years. You know all these terms, but that's exactly right. So, you know, and related to that, don't go and just badmouth your partner or your friend to your family. So don't go to them and say, oh, this guy is driving me crazy. My husband blames me, you know, or my girlfriend is always negative. Because if you start bringing in the family and then you make up and you do well, they don't probably get that part of the story. And then they have bad feelings about you. So you're really making things problematic. And then finally, as we mentioned, this is just the big takeaway is look at your part. So when somebody is upset with you, is there ever anything that you're doing that might be causing that? I always want to check that in myself. Now, sometimes it may not be. It may be that they're just off. But there are times when, you know, am I really, it's like that, you know, look at the log in your own eye.
The speck in your own eye. Yeah. And the log, well, the speck in the other person and the log. Okay, we'll get our Bible straight here.
The log in my own eye, right? Isn't that right?
That's
Is that right?
That's it.
So look at that before I'm really ready to just kind of throw them out.
Because clearly you've done something that's irritated them, probably. Now, you're saying figure out how much of that is ours.
Yeah.
You know, blame's been around for a long time. In fact, I think we could say it started in the garden.
It did. If you think about Adam and Eve were communing every day with God. So how can you get more intimate than that?
Can't.
You're walking and talking with God. Yet Adam, after he sinned, tried to cover up the blame, and he blamed Eve, right? The woman you gave me to be with, she gave me fruit of the tree and I ate. So he didn't take responsibility for his action. So I think there's a deep part in all of us, and that's pride, right? If we look at that,
right.
That's pride.
Right.
Pride looks for someone else to point the finger at when we are confronted with our own sin.
And we do just like Adam did. I wouldn't lose my temper if my coworkers were more considerate, or I would be a lot more patient if it weren't for such long lines at this grocery store, or etc.
So we find our Eve to blame, is what you're saying.
Right.
And Eve blamed too. She pointed the finger at the serpent for her sin. Then the Lord God said to the woman, "What is this you have done?" And the woman said, "The serpent deceived me, and I ate." So Adam blames Eve blames the serpent. I think
we've been blaming ever since.
That's right.
Right. So we see blame in the New Testament too. Pontius Pilate didn't want to take responsibility for his part in the arrest and the sentencing of Jesus for crucifixion, so he blamed it on the Jews and their leaders. In fact, he literally washed his hands of it all.
Yeah, and blame keeps us from humbling ourselves and owning our part. So listen to this from Hosea. No one should accuse or blame another person. Well, Norm,
okay,
it's right there.
Pretty clear.
Let me keep going with that scripture. Don't blame the people, you priests, when they quarrel with you. You will be ruined in the day, and your prophets will be ruined with you in the night.
And Jesus said, for by your words you will be justified, and by your words you will be condemned. Ooh. So we know that our words of blame need to stop.
Right. And you know what? We can stop it. If we just look at the story of Job, he was tempted to do that, and he didn't do it.
Right.
So Romans 14 reminds us, so then, each of us will give account of himself to God. Therefore, let us stop passing judgment on one another. Instead, make up your mind not to put any stumbling block or obstacle in your brother's way. On the day of judgment, guess what? There's not going to be any opportunities for blame. We can't say, God, did you know my mother?
That's right. That's right. The biblical way is to attack problems, not people. Jesus offers us a better way, and we should take it.
All right. Our message is this. You can end the blame game. Assigning blame changes neither your circumstances nor your objectives. Saying, it's not my fault, minimizes the work on the cross. Proverbs tells us, he who covers his sins will not prosper, but whoever confesses and forsakes them will have mercy. So if we want to become mature Christians, we need to recognize our faults, confess them to God, and ask for forgiveness.
That's good.
Stop looking at others to get you off the hook. At the end of the day, God is more merciful to those who have the courage to take responsibility for their actions. Encourage those around you to take responsibility because Jesus took the ultimate blame for us all.
Nice.
That's all the time we have today. Many thanks to my co-host Norm Mintel, who makes the show a conversation, and to our technical producer Wanjing Bu, and our editor Katie Sims Wilson. From all of us here at Faith Radio, hey, we'll talk to you again next weekend. In the meantime, remember, we're doing life together, and it's better when you don't have to do it alone.
Doing life together.
Hey, thanks for listening to this conversation from the Dr. Linda Mintel Show. These conversations are available because of your support. Become a supporter now at myfaithradio.com. Please subscribe to the podcast so you don't miss any episodes, and share it with friends so we can live life to the fullest, walk confidently, and find healing and hope.